Hi friends, I hope everyone's doing well. Let's get started with the collage for day 9. I brought out these 2 pages from a 1968 encyclopedia that has examples of different lace patterns and a monoprinted deli paper that looks like lace. I made it by using half of a paper doily as a stencil when monoprinting. I made a pencil mark 1/8 of an inch from the gutter. I won't be painting the ground, so I won't be using washi tape along the gutter as a guide. I need this mark to know where I can collage up to on the left side. My design plan is to use different lace images covering the substrate. The monoprinted deli paper will be glued on top. When I'm selecting the lace images to use, I'm checking to see what it will look like under the deli paper. I want to make sure there's enough contrast so it's visible. I'm also being mindful of the placement of these images because the layout is simple. I still want this layer to be pleasing, so the images will be placed horizontally and vertically. Some of the cut images will be left unglued for a while. I want to make sure of the placement before securing them to the substrate. Just a reminder that I like to have a mix of narration and music during the collaging sections. I'm trimming off some of the black paint area of the deli paper, so more of the lace images will be visible underneath. This lace layer is beautiful as is with the different patterns, but I wanted to add a wash of color over some of the images. Before adding color, I thought it'd be a good idea to apply a thin layer of transparent gesso. The images have a glossy finish, so by adding the gesso, I'm hoping the images will accept the paint. This coral acrylic paint is listed as semi-opaque, but I think it's very thin on its own. It'll be used as a muted wash of color on top of the black and white image. Working in a sketchbook journal is a good opportunity to try different techniques, so I brought out this watercolor set. I wanted to see how it would work on top of the transparent gesso black and white images. This green gold color complements the existing coral paint. Same with this cobalt teal, it complements the green gold and the coral. Now that the watercolor is dried, I'm adding the monoprinted deli paper using the soft gel matte medium. A couple days ago after I created this collage, I received a comment from Etta on my previous video suggesting I try glossy medium when applying deli paper. She heard it helped to make it transparent. I made a note to try glossy medium next time. Etta, I appreciate you making the suggestion. I tore two small sections of the deli paper when smoothing it out with the brush. I don't think it looks too bad, so I'm going to leave it as is. Here's the finished collage. Adding color to some of the lace images, especially underneath the left side of the monoprinted paper, helped to make them more visible. I'm glad I didn't add color to all of the lace images because I think it would look like a patchwork. I brought out two more encyclopedia pages for this next collage. I chose a few monoprinted scraps that coordinated with the colors on the map page. I kept the design simple. I decided to use my go-to composition, which is the cruciform. You can see how the composition starts to build when I cut the black and white image to make two uneven pieces. This image wasn't big enough to cover the whole left side, so cutting it into two pieces fixed that issue. Since the cruciform composition has elements that are horizontal and vertical, the area where the substrain is showing will be covered with monoprinted papers. The map image is large enough to cover the right side of the substrate. It just had to be cut to size. When I create collages using the cruciform composition, I like to work on the ground or base layer first, then come back in to create the cruciform shape. I decided that the light orange paper wasn't needed. There was enough of that color in the map image. I like the contrast between the encyclopedia pages and the monoprinted papers. I'm happy with the way this one turned out. I brought out another encyclopedia page. This time I'll be using one of the ice skater images. Using an image of a person is outside my comfort zone, so I thought with this daily project it would be a good time to incorporate it into a design. I brought out this blue and green paint to use as well. At the time of filming this collage, I didn't have a concrete design in mind, so these paints were the only supplies I thought to bring out. I chose this image because I like the skater's pose. It'll be used as a focal point. I want to frame this image with paint, so I'm marking its placement with a pencil before painting. Having dry brush edges of each block of color gives a nice textural detail. I'm applying transparent gesso to the image. I decided that I wanted to add paint on top, but I wasn't sure where. It was best to cover the whole surface to be on the safe side. I decided to use this light pink paint. It adds a nice contrast against the blue and green. Also, only painting 2 dry brush lines of this paint to frame the image is a better design detail than adding 4. The design looked a bit plain at this stage, so I brought out a few pieces of painted papers. I won't be using all these papers. I wanted to pull enough so I had options. The pink and burgundy painted papers tie in nicely with the light pink paint. This green painted paper ties in with the green frame around the focal point. All 3 of these papers help to balance the design. One final touch was to add a bit more pink paint to visually strengthen the lines and to dry brush a bit over the pink paper. This helps to tie the elements together. Looking at this collage while editing the video, I saw some areas that I would have done differently, like painting the green paint to the top edge of the substrate, and maybe adding a small painted paper in the upper left area, but all in all, I'm happy with the way it turned out. For this collage, I brought out 2 maps, old dictionary pages, various scraps of paper. This is another one that I didn't have a set design in mind before I started. I decided to bring out blue and gray paints to add in an expressive ground layer. I was hoping that it would spark an idea for a design, and it did. My design idea was to have 2 arch shapes created with the papers. One arch will have straight edge pieces of the maps and the dictionary pages. The other arch will have torn edge colored papers. There'll be a contrast between the expressive painted ground and the paper arches. This collage was fun to make. Sometimes not having a design plan before starting works out. This one has a design that I haven't used before. I made a note to use it again in the future. I had a design idea for this next collage. I like the look of monochromatic artwork. As you can tell by the paper selection, this design will be mostly blues with accents of other colors. I think that monochromatic artwork is successful if it has all three values, light, mid, and dark, also having elements in various sizes and shapes. No paint this time, just papers. I'll add music while you watch me cover the substrate with various blue papers. I'll come back and talk about the accents. Now that the blue papers are all in place, I had to decide on the accent papers. I didn't want to add too many. I wanted to keep the overall feeling of this design as a monochromatic blue. The pink element was a nice contrast against the blues without taking away from it. The orange element was a nice contrast as well. I just had to decide on the right size and shape. As I placed these two elements, I thought it would be an interesting design to have the elements off center or unbalanced, meaning not having them evenly placed around the blue layer. I decided on the scrap of book page instead of the other pink scrap or the red and yellow scrap. I thought those two papers would distract from the blue layer because both had a strong pattern. A small size of this book scrap wouldn't be distracting, just an accent. I really like the design of this collage. When you really take a look at it, the design isn't simple. There are many different blue patterns in various sizes and shapes. The three accent papers are the right colors to be used as such because they don't take away from the blue layer. I was very inspired by the design of the last collage that I wanted to create another one. This time I'm technically not creating a monochromatic ground because I'm using dark green along with teal. I was being mindful when pulling accent papers to pick ones that would work well with green. Once again, I'm using the papers in different sizes and shapes, along with balancing the use of the teal and dark green papers, especially the teal papers that have a small amount of white in the pattern. I pulled this odd shade green paper because I thought it'd be a challenge to use it as is. As you'll see soon, I did end up cutting a small amount of it off so it would fit. I'll add music at this point while you watch me finish this layer. I'll come back when it's time to add the accent papers. Now that the teal and dark green papers are glued in place, I needed to decide on which papers to use as accents. I only wanted to use one of each, one text paper, one purple paper, and one burgundy paper. I still wanted the accents to have an unbalanced placement, but not as extreme as the previous collage. I think positioning the text paper in the upper left would have made the design balanced. By placing it in the lower right below the purple paper, then I would consider this design to be unbalanced. Once I got the placement where I wanted it, I glued down all three elements. I had to do one more minor thing before I considered this collage to be finished. There was a small amount of the paper substance showing and it was bothering me. I came in with a small amount of dark green paint to cover it. I'm happy with the way this collage turned out. This design style is very inspiring to me. This is what I wanted to happen when I started this project, finding different design styles than the ones that I typically use in my art practice. Let's go on to the final one for this week. As I mentioned in the last section, I'm very inspired by the monochromatic design style. This time, I'm doing it a bit differently. These are the accent papers. Instead of creating a monochromatic paper layer, I'll be using paint. It'll be an orange ground in different shades. I brought out red and yellow-orange paint to use to mix with the orange paint to create the different shades of orange. As you watch me paint the ground layer, notice that I'm only using a small amount of the red and the yellow-orange light paints. I don't want any of the elements to be red or yellow. Also notice that I'm varying the sizes and shapes. I'll add music and come back when it's time to add the 3 accent papers. I'm starting with deciding on the blue paper. I had to make the decision on how dark or light I wanted it to be. I ended up using this blue paper that had a variation of mid to dark values in it. I thought it would add a good detail within the shape of the paper. I decided to glue as I go this time. I had a good idea where I wanted to place the 3 accent papers. I decided on this section of the pink paper for a similar reason as the blue. It's mostly light pink with some dark and white. I only pulled one green paper because I wanted it to be a solid color, and I like this color green. Having a solid accent element adds a slight contrast against the two other accent papers that have a variation of colors in each one. Also, I thought this green paper would work well with the various shades of orange. I like this finished collage as well. I'm very happy that I was inspired by this monochromatic design style. I made a note to incorporate it in my art practice. That's it for this week's video. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch it. I hope to see you next week for the next set of collages. Take care.